Welcome to the Principal Training Center and a Pearl of Wisdom. My name is John Mikton. I am the Head of Education Media Technology at the International School of Luxembourg, and I also have the pleasure of teaching the Technology and Leadership course every summer with Patrick Green. What I'd like to do today is share some thoughts and reflections on the idea of harnessing digital fluency. The summer pause is so important, and I really appreciate the capacity to be able to disconnect a bit and take the summer pause to breathe and to really reflect upon what has happened and take stock of my own learning and the learning that has occurred around me, within my own groups, my own teams, and look from this learning on new ways to move forward. The last months for us all have been overshadowed by levels of uncertainty, ambiguity, and volatility connected to a set of complexities that have really permeated into everyone's life, and not by choice. In a short time, sometimes in a matter of hours or weeks, schools have had to pivot to online learning and in many cases move the whole school administrative workflows online. Suddenly in a short time, schools created completely new ecosystems to ensure the services, programs, and learning took place uninterrupted, reimagining every aspect of support for students, educators, and parents in school. The level of time, dedication, and resilience and professional experience from my own personal experience was simply amazing. Yes, it was not perfect. There were areas where we stumbled. There were areas where we hesitated. There were areas we could have done better. But we learned a lot as schools, educators, and leaders. For myself as a school leader, supporting and choreographing a new normal in a complicated and constantly changing dynamic, I was fortunate to experience a rich sense of community, generosity, and empathy every time I reached out to my professional learning network. This generosity and support was critical in my own capacity to support my school and their leadership team that I'm part of. Thank you to my professional learning network. I doubt anybody would argue with me. Schools are a social place. Interactions, group activities, and the importance of being in the same space to learn, share, and collaborate are critical to learning. And suddenly something that we did so well, we had to replicate in a completely new dynamic. As all of us experienced a level of anxiety as we curated the sudden pivot to online learning, there was a sense of urgency and trepidation. I think switching a whole ecosystem online, ensuring the digital platforms, digital environments, and connectivity worked was a challenge. Access and connectivity became a non-negotiable components that we needed to ensure the delivery of our programs. Navigating school platforms and their parameters became a daily requirement of educators, of our students, and our parents. Suddenly, our digital ecosystems became the lifeline to being able to support learning, and there were limited other options. Reflecting and thinking, the one thing that I realized, and that I think many of my colleagues who I had the chance to connect with and talk about this, everything schools did became visible in the home of our students and educators. When before a teacher could close the door and teach, now the screen was the mirror, open, visible, transparent in the living room to both the student and parents. The transparency amplified the visibility of our learning, communication, and engagement. With this came a whole set of new expectations and perceptions from both the school, educators, students, and parents. The conversation we'd had previously in a face-to-face environment changed as suddenly everything was visible and transparent in the home. For schools around the world who in hours or days had to shift a whole community of educators online, there was in many cases little time to redesign, realign learning and lessons to accommodate this new normal. The spectrum of understanding on how to facilitate meaningful learning in an online environment was varied and different, pending age groups being addressed and understanding of the dynamics and components of theories of practice for online learning. As the weeks went on, educators and school leaders tapped into professional learning networks. International educator organizations provided venues, platforms, research to support the building of capacity, to address all the variables associated with online learning in this very unusual context. If anything, and I might be stating the obvious, schools quickly understood as we pivoted all our social and professional discourse online in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the vital role of digital devices and digital environments became so apparent. Having reliable internet connectivity, social network access, virtual learning environments, video conferencing, and the interactions with a proliferation of apps we depended on for work and play. They all provided a sense of connectivity, a sense of community, and even stability and certainty, which was not what we were experiencing with the pandemic. For the technology companies who had been already tracking us 24/7 with their respective digital grids, this new dependency to these seamless and frictionless consumer services as an intimate part of our daily routines was only amplified further. Suddenly, millions upon millions of users became even more connected and dependent on these services 24/7 to consume, be it news, products, or services. In the book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, Shoshana Zuboff describes this process of this tracking. She calls the information that makes up these digital ecosystems and grids behavior surplus. Behavior surplus is the personal data that we leave on our devices and give away daily, based on a mutual agreement between the digital companies and us. These agreements. By the way, when's the last time you read a user agreement? These agreements gave permission for our behaviors online and offline to be tracked, collected, monitored, and analyzed by companies, in some cases governments, at will. The purpose of surveillance capitalism is to leverage this behavior surplus. It's really to mitigate the uncertainty of our desires and to better predict what we will do. This is then turned into a profitable commodity. The value of our behavior surplus is unprecedented, and the raw material of human data is actually fueling the engines of innovation, economics, politics, and power. The new normal that we currently live in, and which will be with us for a while, will continue to accelerate our intrinsic connectivity and cohabitation with digital devices, social networks, artificial intelligence. In tandem, if the current privacy landscape is the sole point of reference for many of our students, and with this an indifference with the erosion of privacy and its implications, in some ways this makes sense. For our students, the current state of privacy is interpreted as normal. This is the new social contract between companies and the consumer, and they've grown up with this and consumed by this. In comparison, educators respond with far more anxious discomfort, as for many this erosion is compared to experiences where individuals felt greater control over their privacy. I think many of you and myself feel that. Privacy has a different context and meaning for me, and I think many of my colleagues. And the new social contract can feel somewhat uncomfortable, and in many ways just generates more questions and unknowns. With the recent experience we've all lived with in the last month as schools, there have been challenges, but some silver linings and new opportunities are there. I think reframing our thinking on how school and learning will need to look like in a new normal can become a rich conversation for schools and communities to engage with. I don't think any of us will argue against the fact that the digital world that we've only become even more dependent on has been key to leveraging our capacity to support our school communities and really ensure that student learning is the center of focus. One thing through these experiences, I have been again reminded the fact that most of our students are highly proficient digital consumers, and they are not digital natives. I think it's important that we reframe our understanding with this. If we think of many of our own interactions with digital environments, it's likely the large percentage of our time is focused on consumption. The silver lining in this narrative is the fact now that we all have experienced having to move our practice, our learning online, in tandem intrinsically understand what it's like to spend days preparing and facilitating lessons, juggling app settings, or being recipients of online lessons, professional webinars, and online team planning. This becomes, I believe, even a richer reason for schools to make digital fluency the new fluency of our time and age. As we've demonstrated the capacity to adapt, reinvent, learn, and tweak our own practice through these digital environments, focusing further on student, educators, and parent ability to be fluent with these digital ecosystems as they continue to grow in prominence, becomes even more relevant to schools, I believe. With the shared experience of the last month, school communities, I believe, have developed a collective understanding and appreciation of the importance of leveraging online digital tools and environments for learning, for well-being, for student agency, and community collaboration. I think with this understanding collective experience, we now have an opportunity to amplify the focus on digital fluency. As we've demonstrated the capacity to tweak our own practice through these digital environments, focusing further on student, educator, and parent ability to be fluent with the digital ecosystems, as they themselves grow in prominence, becomes even more relevant to school. I'd like to share a framework to use as a guidepost. I'd like to spend a few minutes sharing the DQ Institute Digital Intelligence Framework as a reference point to explore and consider. The framework focuses on 3 areas: digital citizenship, which is kind of engaging with the idea of understanding how to interact safely, responsibly, and leveraging positively digital tools. The second is digital creativity, is being a critical thinker, a collaborator, problem-solving and communication skills to turn one's ideas and learning into content. It's kind of getting kids to move away from just consuming, but being content creators. And the last one, digital entrepreneurship, is to leverage the power of digital tools to problem solve and come up with new ideas and solutions, be them just for the classroom, the school community, your local community, or globally. The intelligences are 8 areas of focus which provide a frame of reference. And as you look at these, you quickly realize a lot of them are focused on the idea of well-being and awareness. And this idea, the more information and the more aware we are, and that sense of well-being as we juggle and entertain and consume, will give us a greater sense of ownership and agency. The competencies provide areas of focus that you see here in front of you, focus on the 3 main areas that we talked about: digital citizenship, creativity, and entrepreneurship. And each competency then connects to a set of knowledge, skills, and mindsets and attitudes to support the learner. So for example, if I go to online communication and collaboration as one of the competencies, what I then get is a breakdown of the knowledge, the skills, and the attitudes and values that as educators in school communities we can explore and leverage and scaffold in our own learning. These DQ MAP competencies really are based on digital competency frameworks from around the world. So it's like a meta aggregation of all these different competencies. And I think this framework, which is quite open-ended, really provides a good point of reference and an architecture to really start exploring this conversation about digital fluency that I think has become so important, and even more important considering the context. Moving forward, next steps. I think this unprecedented experience we've all lived together and are still interacting on a daily basis in different geographic contexts really for me highlights the opportunity to reframe how we should engage with digital fluency, with purpose and relevance to our own personal and professional experiences. In our world, in my world, where connectivity only becomes more non-negotiable, it's critical to have a balanced approach, being mindful of the challenges and opportunities surrounding digital devices and environments. And I think this framework that I shared highlights the importance of school scaffolding digital fluency as an essential part of learning. I believe digital fluency provides a guide for students, educators, to shift their energies away from being this concept of passive digital consumers. Digital fluency provides a mindset, I believe, to better understand the importance of the opportunities and the ethical responsibilities that come with digital creation. It provides a set of skills, knowledge, and attitudes which equips students, ourselves as educators and parents, with a more balanced understanding of the implications of digital ecosystems, which, face it, permeates in our lives, both visibly and invisibly. Today, the level of stability, continuity, and certainty that we were once used to has eroded. Uncertainty, ambiguity, and complexity have become ever present in our day. I believe we have an opportunity to embrace the world's uncertainty, not as something eroding our past or challenging the present, but as an opportunity to reframe the possibilities in front of us. And digital fluency is an essential part of our unique and rich learning journey ahead.